listening to Coffee and Conversation with Recovery Advocate Network, the nonprofit organization that strives to address the staggering disparity in resource availability for individuals suffering from mental health disorders, processing disorders, addictions, trauma healing, and sexual identity challenges. Together, we strive to end the stigma associated with these challenges so that true healing can begin. Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation with Recovery Advocate Network. I'm your host, and welcome you to episode number 49. Today, we have Dr. Jennifer Gentile with us today, who is a thought leader and mental health care innovator with more than 10 years of experience in telehealth and digital health, and is committed to improving success and access and quality in mental health care. She is a doctor of psychology and clinical health psychology from William James College and completed her Post-Doctoral Fellowship in Genetics and Metabolic Psychology at Harvard Medical School. In her most recent role as SVP of Clinical Innovation at a digital mental health care company, she collaborated with clinical and academic researchers to improve access, outcomes, and engagement in mental health care. As a practicing clinical psychologist since 2008 at Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard Medical School, Jennifer maintains a deep understanding of the urgent need for effective mental health care. She has led the clinical efforts to found Amwell's 50-state teletherapy offering. In this conversation, we will discuss the importance of creating a safe environment for all voices to be heard and the need for personalized mental health care. We explore the benefits of telehealth and how it has made mental health treatment more accessible and convenient, as well as the stigma surrounding mental health and the importance of expanding the definition of mental health to include everyone. That includes all listeners. Jennifer shares her work in addressing attentional challenges and how video games can be used to improve focus and attention. That got my attention, for sure. We emphasize the importance of diversity in society and the need to improve tools and resources for individuals to live their best lives. So, enough of this. Let's do it. But first, our 3 C's for engagement. The first one, click that subscribe button and the notifications. Okay, you're busy. I'm busy. You will forget. Go ahead and do it now. Trust me, you will not want to miss future episodes. The second one, commit to staying for the full episode. Jennifer is going to walk through some of this innovative technology, the science behind it, and how you can get involved, learn about the Kickstarter, or if you're watching this after the Kickstarter, learn about the technology and how you can test it for your children, your community, yourself. So, hey, stay for the full episode. Don't check out early. That's not the C we want. And then the third C, what is it? Well, of course, it's your coffee. So fill up your coffee, sit back, relax, and let's get started. Okay, listeners, we're going to just start with me laughing because Jennifer and I had a really insightful conversation. It was really amazing. I mean, the reality is you will never know what we talked about because your host, who is a biomedical engineer and really tech savvy, didn't hit the record button. So why don't we start all over with this conversation? I love these real world moments and sharing the fact that none of us are perfect, including Ange, your host. So I will start with what I wanted to set the stage for this episode with. Okay, so listeners, I usually, and this will be in the outro, I will remind everyone that the topics and the opinions expressed in this episode are those of the host and the guest, and they do not represent any organization mentioned. And I want to share that because at RAN, we are very passionate about all voices being heard and creating a safe environment for all voices being heard. We also, if you listen to previous episodes, I personally believe every single individual is unique in and of themselves. And the tools that those individuals need and the skills that they need and the environments they need to be their best selves are different for each individual. So many episodes, we've highlighted different treatment modalities, different self-care options. And we've done this so that I want you to hear this and think, okay, I didn't think about this. I will try this, and maybe trying this will help you be happy, joyous, and free. Okay. And so there are also sets of the population who believe with specific topics that there is only one answer and there's only one solution. And heaven forbid you say something outside of that. And individuals can get really set and really passionate on there's only just one way. And quite frankly, I believe that individuals who are so set that way, it's often out of fear or ignorance, or there's some other things that are stigma, or there's some other things that are underlying. And that's not who Recovery Advocate Network is. We are very much about let's pull out the science. Let's look at facts, let's look at diversity, and let's provide experience and options to individuals. So I'm going to preface that because we are going to talk about something that in some areas could be controversial. And hey, nothing's really controversial here. It's just experience and science and lots of joy. So I'm going to set that up. And then now I'm going to shut up because I want you to, once again, now that I'm recording, I want you to introduce yourself and tell us why you're here today.
Thank you. First of all, thank you so much. And we're all human, right? I always say I'm the best person. So I'm a clinical psychologist by training, but yet I work in technology. So I'm the best person to do it because I'm awful at technology. We don't have a printer at my house because my husband and I just can't figure it out. And he's a physician. We should know how to do these things. So I'm happy to chat again. So like I said, I'm a clinical psychologist by training. And I, for about 20 years, have been in the field of academia on staff at Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard Medical School. And then I shifted over from full-time when I got frustrated with the access and quality challenges in mental health. I felt like I wasn't helping enough people, maybe a dozen or 24 a week. It's thinking, how can we do better, knowing there were so many people we couldn't help. Shifted to telehealth, so led the efforts to create the nation's first national 50-state telehealth program covered by insurance. And then kind of felt like I did my job with that, and then shifted over to improving quality. So looking at things like AI and machine learning. How can you improve the outcome rates? How can you improve people not dropping out of care? And then kind of further expanding from there, how do we think about prevention? How do we think about helping people that don't yet have a diagnosis or are not seeking a diagnosis, but we can help them the things that they're struggling with in their lives, and thinking about helping them through technology and scalable interventions. I wish I could tell you I could scale humans, but I haven't quite figured out how to do that. But technology is scalable. So if we can do it in a responsible and ethical way, I'm all for it.
I love that. And one of the things that I had shared that I love in the middle where Jennifer was talking about those individuals who don't yet have a diagnosis. I'm not sure if those are the words that you use, but I was sharing the experience that I have with my daughter. My daughter has a very rare brain disorder. It's called megalencephaly, which is just a descriptive term. It means she has a large brain. So she has a very large brain mass, large skull, which we noticed when she was 2 months on and manifested into global developmental delays, low muscle tone, cognitive disabilities. And I kind of, when I try and describe her to individuals, I say she kind of behaves as if someone that would have maybe Asperger's or autism, but a heart of someone with Down syndrome. I've never heard her say anything negative about anyone else. She loves everyone. In fact, this kid in middle school stole her phone. And we were joking about this last night because she said that night he's now at the bottom of her friends list. And I was like, why is he even on your friends list? Seriously? She's not even willing to kick him off her friends list. He's at the bottom of her friends list. And she thinks everyone needs hugs. And I don't like to hug. And so I don't know where she came from. But the comment that you said that really tied to me is she struggles a lot with OCD and with anxiety. Anxiety is one of her biggest struggles. And the other day, she's really anxious about making a decision. Okay, she's anxious about making a decision on a color of a mug that she wants to buy. And it's just crippling to her. And she's with my best friend. And so she's texting me and she's like, I think I'm driving your best friend crazy about this. I'm not trying to. And and she's like, my anxiety is out of control. And she's like, I think I'm upsetting her. And so she's expressing this to me. And then she said, did the doctors ever say what it is that I have? And she's 21, right? And so also me as a parent, I'm like, man, I really feel like I've let you down by not trying to like dig more into this. But yeah, she is in that mix of those individuals that have challenges and are still trying to figure out what are the tools that she needs to live her best life. So I love hearing you say, like, trying to look at those unique scenarios that don't fit into a nice little box. I don't think most of us fit into a nice little box, quite frankly.
Most of us don't fit into these neat little categories. We're all unique individuals with constellations of experiences, right? If you think of one of the most common mental health conditions, depression, there are 277 permutations or groups of symptoms that add up to one diagnosis. So the idea, let's just take that out of the water, that we all fit in these neat little categories.
Love it.
So what about thinking about addressing, the word I'd use maybe symptoms or distress. So what we've decided, or co-founded our first company, I've never co-founded a company before, called Think. And we have a technology that helps people with attention, concentration, and self-regulation. Now, if I pick out one of those things, attention, that is common in most mental health conditions. You have attentional challenges and thinking challenges. So how can we think about kind of looking at that? So maybe thinking about the case with your daughter, how can she be present in the moment? How can she process that information of making those decisions? Are there better ways that she can help to kind of bring herself down, self-regulate better, and acknowledge that she's got this. She knows how to make these decisions, but to have those tools. I think also thinking about, how do we help her do this? You said she has complex medical issues. The last thing she wants to do, I imagine, is go to a doctor's office, right? But it could be, she's 21, could be that she wants to play a video, could be there's another way through technology she wants to interact. So how do we meet people where they're at so they can live their best lives?
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. So her anxiety to go into a doctor's office, I mean, she'd be hyperventilating just at the idea of doing it. And, she does now have a service dog who's made the world of a difference to her when she flies and stuff like that. But I love that. So we are going to connect because on the side, because I didn't even think about that part until you said that. And I'm actually now so grateful that she had this anxiety attack earlier this week. So now I can say, okay, woosah. Okay, so we are going to talk more about that technology. I want to dig in a little deeper and unpack the telehealth, because we'd started talking about the telehealth and I'd said, the listeners know that I am a victim of a kidnapping and hostage situation. And then I spent 6 months in residential treatment and then went home. And the idea when I went home of going to a psychiatrist's office or going to a psychologist's office to talk about these things. And I just want to I'm going to close my eyes. Like, anyone watching on YouTube can see me close their eyes. If you're on Spotify or whatever, just imagine I'm closing my eyes. But picturing back in those days, me having to get in my car and drive. I was living in Atlanta. Okay. Drive, through traffic, thinking while I'm driving through traffic that I'm going to have to talk about, or I'm not going to have to, right? But I'm going to share terrifying things that I need to talk about with my therapist. And I'm going to be distracted. So I'm going to be driving. I'm going to be stressed about that, right? And then I'm going to go up into their waiting room and sit there with other people who are strangers, which someone who has severe PTSD, that's just like, oh my gosh. And then I'm going to go into their room and sit on their couch with tissues there and sit for 50 minutes, right? And then I'm just going to miraculously get up and then drive home. No. I mean, it was such a joy to me that I had an amazing therapist who was telehealth. And in California, or I live in California now, I have an amazing therapist who's telehealth. And also now, thankfully, because of these services, I've completely, I live a very, very full life, very much a contributing member of society. I'm COO of a company, and I can do my therapy appointment. I can take a lunch break from my office, shut my door. I don't drive anywhere. I just talk to my therapist, and then I go about my day. And it is so healing. The amount of progress I've made that way versus how traumatic a full day. I mean, really, it really takes, half a day or a full day out of your week to do the other.
Well, traumatic, not to mention expensive, not to mention you have to take time off work or find childcare. So telehealth is the way I understand it. It's yet one way we can think about customizing or personalizing the healthcare experience to help people be able to access healthcare. That's what's comfortable for you. There's so many examples of how telehealth can be helpful. I think about postpartum mothers. They're already stressed trying to get outside the house, and now ask them to, clean up themselves, clean up their baby, get the spit up off their shirt and have 14 outfits because we know the baby's going to have accents along the way. So I love that you had that experience, and it's also normalizing, right? That during your lunch break, yes, I'm going to go chat with my therapist versus I have to go to this kind of cold, austere, clinical, academic medical center because of something wrong with me to get my care versus I'm chatting with somebody who's going to give me some tools how I can improve my life. And so how do we think about, yes, variety of ways in our lives can we bring healthcare into the home and also bring healthcare where people are comfortable. Some people aren't comfortable in the home. So still allowing those care settings where people say, you know what, I don't want this to happen in my home. Some people aren't safe at home with domestic violence and things like that. But we need to think about customizing, right? Because we have to improve the outcomes in mental health care. And we also have to decrease the amount of people who drop out from care for whatever reason, what's not working for them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're taking something that before would take 2.5 to 3 hours out of my day to now it's taking 50 minutes out of my day. So just the ROI there. Okay. Secondly, I am a big believer that leaders should talk openly about these things to their team. So as COO, I will say, I'm shutting my door because I'm going to talk to my therapist, and I'll bring up in meetings, well, my therapist said I should do this, X, Y, and Z. I don't do that because I want to overshare. That's not my point. Okay. I also don't do that because I'm talking about RAN. Everything to do with RAN and the podcast and everything, we're 100% volunteer. So I'm not making any money by doing that. I am doing that because I want my team members to feel like, hey, this is normal. So we talked a little bit about this idea of that mental health has this definition that society has put with it. When they hear the word mental health, it has its own inherent stigma that's been put with it. And I've said that Joshua Young, who manages our Between the Lines blog club series, he and I had this conversation the other day because as we're trying to get individuals to write blogs or be guests on the podcast, some individuals, they hear mental health podcast, oh, I don't have any topic that you'd be interested in. Now, granted, we've done topics on leadership, and we've done everything, right? You know why? Because mental health touches every single human being. And so I even said that this morning I was getting ready and I thought maybe we change it so it's Coffee and Conversation, a mental well-being podcast. Because if you're a human being, then you basically have the diagnostic code to qualify.
It's so true. It's so true. I wish that there wasn't such a stigma and a pathology that comes with mental health. If you think about physical health, you can be physically healthy, right? But people don't think about mentally healthy. They think if you use those words, there's got to be something wrong with you. There's something that you kind of talk about behind closed doors, and you never talk about getting treatment because you worry people might think that you're not capable or qualified or weird or strange for whatever stigma brings along with our society. So I know I hate the idea of thinking about rebranding to well-being, but we have to think about bringing it into the commonplace. I always think about, we talk about neurodiverse and neurotypical. It's not this artificial bifurcation. We all live along the spectrum.
Can you define those since we have listeners from all walks of life? Can you define those? Yeah.
Gosh, and everyone's going to have a different definition, I should say. So when people
Yes.
talk about neurotypical, it's often that you don't have, for example, a mental health condition, or you might not have autism or other kind of diversity. Versus if you're neurodiverse, you might carry those diagnoses. But really, all the kind of diagnoses and typicalities in the world, they're along a spectrum. And so for us to think about it, you either are or you're not, rather than thinking about individual characteristics like, oh, we're good at this and we struggle with this, and we might need some help with this, and when we can help others grow with this. So how do we think about just happening, exactly like you're talking about during your team meetings to talk about, or let's think about it this way, and it's okay that you got advice from a therapist.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. Okay, so tell me this. Then in your work, so we talked some about attention deficit. I know you've done so much work in attention deficit. Let's dig a little bit into your passion in attention deficit. And I think especially in many of the other topics that we've talked about on this podcast have kind of individuals have shared, guests have shared that they've really struggled with this. And in many of the books of the book club that I've read and interviewed their authors, they've talked about struggling with this, and thereby when they've struggled with this, it's then manifested because they didn't have the tools to deal with it. Then they used coping tools that are sub-ideal. Okay. Mm-hmm. So why don't we dig a little bit into your work in this space?
Yes. So maybe we can start from the end. So using those coping strategies don't quite work for them. So to start with, most people, by the time you get to late adolescence, and if you have a diagnosis of ADHD, you also have another diagnosis, most commonly anxiety or depression. So bottom line, it's super hard to manage ADHD. I would love to talk about not necessarily attention deficit disorder. I want to talk about attentional challenges. I don't care if you have a diagnosis or not. Let's think about what are things you struggle with: attention, impulse control, self-regulation. How do we improve your lives with that? How do we not stigmatize? Okay. This is one of the few mental health conditions, I guess you might add addiction, where you hear words like lazy, not motivated, and it somehow turns characterological, and which is very confusing. And it's actually folks who struggle with attention challenges, it's truly harder for them to pay attention, and harder for them to pay attention to non-preferred things. It could be they can amazingly hyper-focus on something they love. So it's a matter of thinking about it in kind of constellations of things. And if you might need pieces of the constellations of attention challenges, but then on the flip side, I would also think about it like a superpower. Like, so many CEOs and entrepreneurs have ADHD. And in my new company, we're working with folks with attention challenges. My company story is so easy to tell because everyone says, my cousin, my nephew, myself have struggled with this. So how can we help? And we definitely have options like stimulant medications, and they absolutely can be helpful. We also know there are side effects. We know that the stimulant shortages, and we also know many people don't want to be on controlled substances for the rest of their life. There is the option of therapy. Therapy is actually, believe it or not super helpful for attentional challenges. I always think about the idea of waiting till 5 to 6 o'clock on a Tuesday. That's when you put a child in a room with an adult, and that's when you talk about all your attention challenges. No, it's the rest of the week when you figure out, how do we help you improve your life. So one thing can be helpful is parent-child therapy. So parent guidance therapy can be helpful for attentional challenges. But finding providers is really hard, really specialized providers. And then adding to what you're talking about, many therapists right now, they don't take insurance or they don't have appointments available. So there is that provider shortage. So thinking about what are other ways, and not necessarily ways that replace things, but what are other ways that we know that are based on evidence that can improve attentional symptom, improve focus, improve self-regulation, and then also improve those cognitive skills. So when I say attention, as a psychologist, there's so many things that kind of fall under it. I see it as an umbrella. So there's selective attention, divided attention, etc. So then we find something that works, right? And then the next step is, well, they have to use it. Because we know in therapy, for example, or even with medication, many people stop the intervention halfway through for whatever reason. So let's think about something that's engaging. What do kids, for example, like to do? And frankly, what do grown-ups like to do? Play video games.
Video games,
right?
yes.
Right? So we developed this really neat technology where you play a video game. And then soon into the technology, we're realizing we need to measure what we are trying to improve. Okay? So we actually developed an EEG headset that measures when the brain is paying attention, and when they're paying attention, the character moves in the video game.
Oh,
which I know,
wow.
So it
the nerdy part of me just got chills.
Me too,
I just got chills.
Never I thought as a psychologist would I be able to help kids in this way. This is so exciting. So they are playing the video game and they see the character move and move faster. They know they're doing that, and they know that they're honing their power of focus. They're getting themselves into a flow state.
I love this. I'm just like, so does this, in this instance then, okay, and this is the Think product, right?
Yes.
The Think company. Okay.
Think, yeah.
So I'm like, okay, and don't get too far ahead in your thing. Cause now I'm immediately thinking, okay, do I have to ship my daughter to Boston?
This is what everybody says. Yeah.
Do I need to finish this episode and book her flight to Boston? Is she staying in? Do you have a guest room that my daughter is staying in?
Oh my gosh. This is our challenge as a company, because I've never met a person who doesn't see the logic of it. I'm a 47-year-old woman with 4 kids. Obviously, I need to improve my attention and focus. It's a no-brainer. So we're all doing after school programs, and pretty soon in the next 6 weeks or so, we're going to formally announce we're already sitting in after school centers and starting on a school in February. So in group settings and then settings where we can do it at home. So it's pretty exciting. And the idea that we have something that improves academic performance, improves homework challenges. So kids with, homework can be challenging for all kids, is exciting. And for me, with my own kids who have some attentional challenges, having them be successful, be able to do this on their own. This is something they do. We call it like physical therapy or cognitive skills for the brain. And you do it for 6 weeks or so. And they take the iPad, they put the headset on, and then they go to their bedroom, and then they come out, and then they've done their quote unquote work to improve their attention. Now think about how different that is than me, going and trying to go over a workbook with them. Let me teach you these different cognitive skills. No. Yeah.
I remember, with Rihanna and her challenges, I remember at one point, because when she was younger, I worked at Emory University running clinical trials, and I was commuting 3 to 4 hours a day. Oh. And I would get home and then try and sit for hours with her doing homework. And I was thinking, wow, my parents are really lucky that myself and my siblings didn't have these struggles. Like they basically said, do your homework, get A's. Uh-huh. And we were blessed. We did our homework and we got A's. And, we were blessed in that. And then here, I have my amazing child who I remember at one point when she's like arguing with me over her, I don't know, like 6th grade math. Uh-huh. And I'm just like, do you realize I went through all of the maths, and the only math I didn't get an A in my life was Calc 3. And that's because I decided to take it one summer at Georgia Tech. At the same summer, I decided to date a new boyfriend and take DSP and take that's something else, right? Like, you're arguing with me about 6th grade math. I mean, I'm really good at math. It was funny, right? But just sitting there and that struggle, and I can say that so many parents can relate to this, right? Because, and I felt like the world's worst mom, because I felt like I'm trying to help her, but I'm getting irritated. First off, God only gave me one child for a reason. I think he was just like, girl, you can only handle one of these. We're gonna nip this in the bud. You don't have enough patience for more than one of these. So we're good there. But I would feel horrible, right? Because it's I want her to be successful. I don't want to destroy her ego and her self-confidence. Mm-hmm. But yet there's this internal fight and struggle. And what do? Do I just give up? And then she's in tears and I'm in tears. And it's just oh my gosh,
And the struggle is real, so real.
It is so real.
She probably feels so bad too.
Yes.
She doesn't want to argue against her mom. When kids have trouble with behaviors, like, it doesn't make them feel good. They're doing it to something is not right. So we need to figure out how to give them those tools in the beginning that allow them to pay attention, to slow down, to be able to, I always think about, unless a kid can sit down, have their pencil, find their book, and find their actual homework assignment, we can't learn how smart they are. There's so many kids who their potential is not being realized. I mean, if you think, in the prison system, 1 in 4 people have ADHD, right?
Yeah.
We know that there's increases in substance abuse rates, poor school performance, poor rates of job performance, low educational attainment. We have to do better. And with COVID, these challenges have gotten even worse. And then even more worse, if you look at underserved communities, the gaps are just growing. During COVID, when wealthier families had the luxury to do tutoring with these private centers, to have executive functioning coaching versus kids who weren't able to be in school, we're seeing tremendous gaps, and we have to help everybody catch up and to be able to meet their own potential.
I love what you just said at the end. Let everyone, because I'm thinking of, so one of the conversations we've had at Georgia Tech, so I'm very tied into Georgia Tech, and I bleed Georgia Tech. I'm 100% biased. Actually, you can see Tech Tower, a picture in my background. And many of the board meetings we've had over the past year and a half have all focused on AI. Okay. And also focused on us integrating into Georgia Tech mandatory classes on the ethical use of AI, and conversations about how the value of the first meeting we had was, should we allow entrance essays? Should we allow students to use ChatGPT for entrance essays? Okay. That was like the hot topic a year and a half ago. And I loved Georgia Tech's stance, because this is what they said. Georgia Tech is passionate about having students from every single county in Georgia. Okay. Which means that all of the students coming into Georgia Tech aren't all going to have had calculus in high school, because depending on where you go to high school in Georgia, it may not even be offered. You may go to Westminster and have a gazillion AP courses, or you may go to a small town where you don't even have the option to take an AP course or calculus or anything like that. But you're incredibly brilliant. And guess what? Georgia Tech wants those people as well. Okay. Nice. So what Georgia Tech has said is that ChatGPT, all it's doing is leveling the playing field. Okay. Because if you put something in and you get garbage out, and you don't take the time to then craft it into what is appropriate and makes sense, that's where it's going to kill you, right? Because that's what it is. But they said, we have had students that come from families that have the economic means to pay for tutors to help them write their entrance essays for forever. Yes. Okay. And all this is doing is providing the exact same tool to everyone. Yes. So I love what you're saying. Yes. I love what you're saying, because I know that these psychologists that deal with these learning education tools are incredibly expensive. They don't file insurance. And so many families, they don't have the means to pay for these. Okay. It's out of the realm. You have some economic levels that can afford it, fine. But then the other ones that can't. And I want a diverse society. I want to be able to provide these tools to allow everyone to be able to have the tools to be successful. And offering something like this that doesn't require $300 an hour to sit with an expert to do this is absolutely amazing.
100%. The average family with a child with attention challenges spends $10,000 out of pocket, which obviously not everybody has. So we need to think about, how do we create that core baseline? I almost think about it like free kindergarten for all, these free core skills that we need to think about everyone has that right to have that. They have the right to be able to maximize their ability to learn. If we think about, in the US, kids have the right to free and appropriate education. But if you can't attend and you don't have the resources in your family to figure out how to create those wraparound supports and the variety of providers that are often with kids with attentional challenges, that child is at a disadvantage to no fault of their own or the system that they live in.
Now, and actually, I would say this, it's not just the child that's at the disadvantage. I think society at large is at a disadvantage because some of the most amazing people I know who come up with like just creative, out of the box ideas are individuals who come from incredibly unique walks of life in areas. So we're selling that is why Georgia Tech wants this level of diversity. And listeners, to be super clear, I'm sure a lot of universities do. I can only speak from the one that I know because that's my experience. And of course I'm biased, so I just like to say Georgia Tech. But anyway, but that's why, for example, in the C-suite, right? We want to see more diversity. We want to see women. We want to see people of color and different gender identity and those types of things. Because science shows when you get individuals who have different ways that they think or different backgrounds, whatnot, then the thoughts that come out, you get away from that group think that is the standard way, right? And you broaden it, and your overall level of success is significantly higher as an organization, as a community, and as a society. So it's not just giving those kids and their families a second chance. It's giving society, the communities, and everyone else. And quite frankly, I am a better human being because I get the opportunity to learn from these unique human beings. So it's making my life better. I didn't have these intellectual challenges growing up. I had my own set of challenges, but they weren't intellectual. But when I get to meet someone who's had some of these challenges and they've found a unique way to overcome it, I learned something amazing from them.
Mm-hmm. So much of life is problem solving. And so much of life is being creative, and that helps you from an entrepreneurial perspective. So diversity is key to that. If you only sit with people who are like you, my gosh, you don't grow, you don't learn, you don't understand different, perhaps better ways of doing things. You lose a big segment of your customer market if you're a business person.
Yes!
we do. So I can 100% echo that. Thank you for saying that out loud. I appreciate that.
So I'm trying to picture, and I want to go a little bit back to the science of the EKG and the game. Okay.
Yes.
So part of it is, so I get this. And so now I'm going to say what I think you were saying to me, and then tell me everything I get right or wrong, and then elaborate on it because I want to learn more about the science about it. Okay. So you're going to put an EKG on the EEG, not on the heart, everyone, but EEG, electroencephalogram. Is that right? Okay. Instead of electrocardiogram. So we're going to do an EEG on the brain. Okay. And we're going to play a video game. And the video game, the player in the video game is going to move when the neurons or whatever realize that you're concentrating on it. So in order for this to make progress through the levels, you have to concentrate on this character. You have to concentrate on whatever it is. Okay. Yeah. So it's training the brain to concentrate on something for sequentially longer periods of time.
Exactly.
And by doing that, you're learning this new skill that then, how translatable is that? Like how long of a process does this take, and how does this then shift into when you're using it in other areas?
So you just asked $1 million question. So in the last 10 years, I've been in the field of digital health, and there's lots of technologies that don't necessarily translate to real life improvement. So that in the field that we're in, it's called transfer. So transferring the skill, let's say, of tapping a bot in a video game, how does that translate to not hitting your brother at the dinner table, right? So that's the holy grail in the field that we're in. So we actually have 8 clinical trials, 5 peer-reviewed papers, and we have evidence of real-life transfer. So things like improving homework is an example, because my goal in life is not to make kids better at video games. Believe it or not, we don't have any video games at our house, with the exception of the Think game. So thinking about how do we look at behavioral improvements, the academic gains. We have, when a child plays our game, I'll give 2 examples. They improve on their math and reading fluency 6 and 8 months respectively more quickly than they would if they didn't play the game. So over that course of 6 weeks of gameplay, they've advanced 6 months. Now, we're not a reading
Wow.
game or a math game, but we can teach you how to be receptive to learning, how to be that sponge that we want all kiddos to be. And you've had so many great points. I think I've forgotten a couple of the other points.
That's great. I'm just trying to scientifically piece it together. So, and part of it was, how long do you have to do it? Right. And so, for example, is this a game so if my daughter gets this device, and starts playing it, is this something that she'll do for a set period and then stop doing, or is it something that she will continually do? That's question one. And I'll pause because I am really bad about just let me throw out 6 questions for you, Jennifer.
So important. These are amazing questions. So, and obviously I need to play the game, right? The fact that I'm not remembering because memory is part of what we have to train. So they wear the headset, they play the video game. They play it 3 or 4 times a week for about 20 minutes each time for about 6 weeks. So I wish I could tell you overnight this has happened, but we know change, other than surgeries, change doesn't tend to happen overnight. The way I would explain it, it's like physical therapy for your brain. So it's cognitive skills training. So people learn what it feels like and how do they turn on their attention and their focus. If you think about elite athletes, they can hone in, get in the state of flow, let's say on a football field, and they have to throw this tremendous pass while all the crowd is screaming and football players are running towards them. They have to have that focus in order to be successful. So that takes practice for them to be able to turn that on in the context of all the pressures and complexities of life and distractions of life. And through the game, yes, they use their brain to make Skylar move forward. And they also learn 13 key cognitive skills. So there are game metrics that map onto cognitive skills. And then those cognitive skills, those map onto real life behavioral improvements. So we are monitoring, we have standardized assessments and measures that have shown that we've made, we call it clinically and statistically significant improvement over the course of playing the game. And then I think the last question you asked, again, we're testing my memory here. The last question is, so you play the game once. So you do play the game, and then after that we have maintenance and we're developing new things, because we know over the course of development we're always working on things. You have the struggles of an 8-year-old are different than a 15-year-old or different than a 40-year-old. So you would do our core game, and then you go into a maintenance mode and things that you had challenges with. So for example, your impulse control, you could have improved it, or your selective attention, or focused attention, or sustained attention. We might add more modules specifically used. So it's a personalized profile. So then you would continue playing that game until you can achieve mastery. And then if you or adults in your environment think that could be helpful for you to work on other skills, then you would play other games that we are developing for them.
So the first game, though, is called Skylar's Run, right?
Yes.
That is amazing. I just love things like this because it is taking a step back and looking at the challenge from a new way and thinking about change management. How do you do change management?
Yes.
You figure out how to get the individual who needs change and grow, get them excited. And it's almost like, it's really, especially for kids, it's kind of tricking them into growing in this way.
Absolutely. No, a good therapist is one where the child doesn't know they're in therapy. They feel like when they're playing, go to my play doctor. It's the same concept. People learn much better when they are having fun, calm, and relaxed. We want to get them in that state to be receptive to learning. We want them to want to do it again. We don't want to be like, oh, I have to do this other piece of homework or other things. So yes, that's really important. Changing the way and thinking about how do we get kids to learn.
What options do listeners have at that point?
Yes, go to think.com. THYNK.com, and you can learn about the different options we have, as well as we serve as an educational resource for folks with attentional challenges. Can point you in different directions, whether it's peer support groups or providers, or tips and tricks of how to kind of live your best life and maximize your superpower.
That is so perfect. Okay, so that's the think side. Now, I know you've done a lot of work in some other areas in AI and in other technologies. Is there another area you'd really like to make sure we focus on today?
One thing I didn't say out loud that I'm happy to say that this is the attention piece is a personal mission for me. 4 out of my 6 family members are diagnosed with ADHD, so I understand the life. And I'm a child psychologist and my husband's a pediatrician. You know, we're the people who should be experts at this, but it can be really challenging. And having options and having kindness and patience for people with attentional challenges, I think it is important as well, because can be glossed over because it doesn't necessarily, you can say, oh, it's a behavior problem. And that really does not give it justice to the serious impact it can have on people's lives.
Absolutely. And I love how you commented, because I know quite a few CEOs. I know so many entrepreneurs who have really strong ADHD. And I think it also ties to there is value add in it. The brain is working in ways that makes it a superpower in some areas, which is amazing. It's just like many things that I have are superpowers in some areas. And yet in other areas, I mean, I struggle with impulse control. And it's also because I struggle with impulse control. I could be addicted to something really easily. And I'm also an overachiever in things. I'm always going to be super competitive, and I'm going to want to be my best, and I'm going to whatever. So it's one of those character traits that is a huge asset in this area. And if gone unchecked, could be a huge detriment in this area. And me, I'm constantly working with learning new tools to balance the two and figure out, okay, this area, it's great. Continue to do it in this area. And when I observe these behaviors in these situations, not so great. And let's figure out some alternate methods in these areas.
Yes. No. And going back to the beginning about celebrating the diversity. We need people who can sit in an office and let's say in my field, who can see patient after patient for 40 hours a week. That's something that my brain can't sit and do. I love the diversity in my work environment and the novelty and thinking about how can we do things differently? What are some challenges and how do we think about addressing those challenges? Somebody can't find a provider. What about finding a provider from the other side of the state? So there's we all contribute to this fabric of a successful, content society.
That was beautiful. Well said. Okay, is there anything you really want to make sure the listeners take away today that we didn't already cover?
I don't think so.
I love talking with you. I think it's just, I especially love the combination of the brain, psychology, culture, human beings, and then science tied to it. And then taking a step back and saying, let's not continue to do the same things
we heads, right?
Yes, exactly. Because wow, it's just like, seriously, it didn't work for all this time. Why do we suddenly think it's going to work?
It is so true. So true. Yes.
Thank you for that. Okay. I meant to remind you of this. I hope you remember to bring your favorite motivational quote, because it is a requirement of this podcast. Yes. Awesome. Yes. What's your favorite motivational quote?
My favorite motivational quote, which also happens to be my family quote, is do small things with great love. And it's a Mother Teresa quote. And so thinking about everything that you do your best to be purposeful, and you don't know, all these kind of small steps add up to really exciting things and exciting changes and opportunities. And everyone can contribute. Again, going back to the diversity piece. So doing those small things with great love helps to make really great things in a larger scale.
Love it. This was amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I'm kind of glad we had all the technical difficulties. It just makes it more fun.
Yes, absolutely. Well, can I comment on your daughter?
Yes, absolutely.
See, this is like every time I talk about this, like it always ventures into. So I was talking to a psychiatrist friend of mine, and she was saying there's this new phenomenon she's seeing with teen girls. And I don't know if your daughter has any developmental delays, but teen girls.
She does.
She's 21. that they're experiencing this decision paralysis. So like they go to like a store and do they want vinegar, salt, and vinegar chips, or do they want plain potato? Like these things that don't feel like big decisions to other folks without. It's been attributed to anxiety, and they're actually finding that they don't meet criteria for ADHD, but they have executive functioning challenges. And it's actually coming, the kind of the root or the etiology is executive functioning versus anxiety. So those are two different interventions. So the reason why it's important, because it looks the same on the outside, is you do two different interventions with either. So just to kind of say that out loud.
Oh, that's
spot
on. Hers is definitely executive functioning. So when you look at her, and a challenge that I've had for her, so she's sitting at like an IQ of like 87, and a challenge that I had with her. Okay, if you look at her when you first meet her, she looks okay, I'm going to say this word, listeners, and then I'm going to completely reject it. Okay. She looks normal. There's no such thing as normal. Okay. But for forever, from the beginning of days, I remember when I first took her to daycare. So she didn't learn to walk until she was 3. She wasn't potty trained until she was 5. So global delays in all areas. Okay. And when I first took her to daycare, I was trying to explain to them ahead of time to set them up for success. And they're like, oh, no, she's fine. And then 2 weeks in, they're like, we need to do a parent-teacher conference. Do you know your child is delayed and all these? And I'm like, yes, I kind of tried to tell you that a couple weeks ago. Okay. So fast forward, she's in 1st grade. The same thing happens. Okay. And the psychologist at the school tested her. And then when we met for her IEP, which is an individual IEP, IEP. What is the IEP's education plan? Plan. Yes. Okay. So when we first met with that, then he said, I loved testing Rihanna because she was so unique. He said, I'm so used to testing individuals that I kind of can guess ahead of time how they're going to test. He said, but Rihanna, the things that I thought she should be able to do, she completely struggled with. And then he said, and then there was something that I thought, there's no way this kid is going to be, and he was like, she totally nailed it. And then he said, and then the whole time, he's like, she's cracking jokes. He's like, she had me dying laughing. Like, she's so witty. Like, she's got puns for days. But then, so that was funny. So then, she was in kind of hybrid classes all of her life. So then in high school, when they redid her test, the psychologist in high school looked at her results and he's like, I've never seen results like this before. And so he pulled her 1st grade results and they were the exact same. And it was exactly that. So it's been this, and it's a lot of executive functioning type things. And I really need to partner with someone to help her in this next phase of her life, be her best, because she's an amazing human. And she does. I really just want her to be a stand-up comedian one day because,
if you think about life skills, the idea to do algebra, we don't need to do algebra. The idea of getting along with others, we really need to figure out how to do that. And humor is such a key part of that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, if you need someone to make you laugh, that's why I started when she was maybe like 9, this hashtag Rihanna-isms. So they're all over Facebook. And she'll even say, that's why I have Rihanna-isms about it.
I love that. We all need those advocates like you in their corner. Not everyone.
Yes. Yeah. No, but I love that. But I love tying back to, I love Mother Teresa. If I were going to, I don't know, come back as anyone, I would want to come back as her because just like her heart, right? And seeing every human being. Yeah. Mother Teresa just saw people as people.
Yes.
And that's one of, if I were going to tie Rand's mission to how you would embody it in a human being, it would be Mother Teresa. Because Rand, we just want to see people as people. And we want to meet people where they're at. And we want to figure out how to give people voices. We want to figure out how to give people resources. And we know, because everyone with Rand is 100% volunteer, we know we can only do small things, but we are absolutely doing them with great love. No. So I love that quote.
Oh, that's wonderful. No, Mother Teresa, I've kind of quote unquote followed her, as you did many years ago. And I had the joy, I volunteered in Calcutta a handful of times. And it's those small things. It's washing the feet of people who are dying. It's those things. So think about, you and the loving care of your daughter. over and over and over again. It's what we do and how we try to make the world a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. We only live once, so we might as well do it. Jennifer, this has been amazing. Such an honor to have you.
So much for this opportunity.
Thank you for joining us today with your coffee and conversation. We hope you've been encouraged and learned something from today's story. To learn more about today's guest, please check out our show notes for more details. Now it's time to remember to like this episode, subscribe, and turn on your notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. Recovery Advocate Network envisions a world where individuals with mental health challenges receive comprehensive and effective treatment without the worry of financial burdens to themselves or their families, all without the stigmas often present in society. We are proud that every individual working with RAN does so on a 100% volunteer basis. You can support the mission by making a financial donation via PayPal or Venmo, or email donate@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org if you would like to donate items for our next fundraising auction. Please visit our website at www.recoveryadvocatenetwork.org to learn more. Now, stay in the loop about upcoming events, future episodes, and more by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter X, TikTok, LinkedIn, and all major podcast platforms. As a reminder, the experiences and advice expressed in this episode are the host and guest's own personal stories and do not represent the opinions of any organization mentioned. RAN is passionate about opening the doors for all voices and experiences, not just those expressed in any particular podcast. If you want to share your experiences or expertise, we encourage you to be a future guest by emailing us at podcast@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org or submit a blog by emailing blog@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org. We also encourage you to comment on the episode so that we can continue to provide content that is most beneficial to the community. How do you do that? Visit our website at www.recoveryadvocatenetwork.org, and in the top right corner, click that comment button and comment. So listeners, what do you need to do? Pause what you're doing, subscribe, follow us. Please give us a like and a 5-star rating, write some meaningful comments, and most importantly, share these episodes with your friends. You never know whose heart you will touch, so please be a part of a reason someone has new hope today. If this episode was triggering to you, we encourage you to contact your support system, therapist, national and community support groups, the Global Crisis Text Line by texting 741-741, and or if in the U.S., dialing 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you're in the U.S. and need additional resources such as shelter, support group resources, transportation, food, and or a safe, confidential path out of physical or emotional domestic abuse, please call 211 or visit www.211info.org for assistance. Now, we know you are very busy, and we are grateful that you said yes to sharing time with us today. If you stuck to our 3 C's of engagement and listened to the full episode, then visit the podcast section of our website and leave the comment about the podcast, and you'll be entered to win an autographed copy of one of the books from one of our book club series, as well as a coffee and conversation coffee mug. So thanks again. Until next time, back to your coffee.